Guys of Reddit. What is your worst meeting the dad moment when dating someone new? The first time I was at my now ex-GF's place. We each took a piece of fruit when she showed me around. When I finished my banana, I went to throw it away downstairs. The garbage can was below the sink. So I bent down. And it made quite some noise when I opened it. From the other side of the room comes an angry hey. What do you think you're doing there? As I stand up again I look into an angry dad and stumble up. Just throwing away my banana. Double quote. Then he starts laughing. Oh. Haha. I thought it was the dog going through the trash. I couldn't see you. They made fun of that for a long time. When you're meeting the dad for the first time, but the dog comes up to you and is super friendly because he already knows you. Awkward. Was invited over to watch Pride and Prejudice with a girl I liked. Why that movie? We were about 19. She stayed with her dad. Met dad and he did typical dad things. Fast forward a few hours and we are in the dark living room on the couch watching the movie. Her legs were on my lap and I was rubbing them when I see a glint to my left by the hallway. Her dad is standing in his boxers holding a big kitchen knife. Everything alright in there, Jen? Yeah dad, she didn't even see him and never believed me when I told her what happened. I'm female. But I have a story that'll fit. Background: my dad is a very blunt man. Sweet as can be and will give you his last penny. But he's got no filter and will not even pretend to like someone if he doesn't. I had dated this guy in my early 20s. Who was a complete dick dash. I was too in love to see it. Or even care tbh. The first time he met my parents. My mom, the ever sweet southern debutante, was nice to him. My dad not so much. Mom and ex we're talking. And mom notices that dad is leaned back in the chair sleeping. She wakes him up. To tell him how rude he's being. My dad said might be rude. But I don't like that boy. Not gonna talk to him. Got nothing to say. Then friggin' went back to sleep. I was mortified. Dad loves my spouse though. Girl's father was in a wheelchair. But was built very well. He obviously lifted as much as he could from his confines. Girlfriend warned me he previously tried to break a guy's hand upon meeting him and shaking his hand. So I went to meet him. He stuck his hand out to shake mine. I didn't hesitate. I shook his hand. He looked at his daughter as if to say if you weren't here, I'd totally snatch his hand off his wrist. Then he started giving me the talk about dating his daughter. He ended it with telling me about his .45 in a shelf. I really wanted to answer with this shelf. Right next to me. But across the room from you? But I decided against it. Apparently while we were out, her parents ransacked her bedroom and found our notes that we had written back and forth. I wrote words like sheet and as. So they forbade her from seeing me again. As a teenage dweeb, I dated this very sweet girl during my senior year of high school for a few months. She finally asked me over to have dinner at her family's house to kinda show the family that we're taking our relationship seriously. I had never met her parents before, nor had I even done a meet the parents before. So I was a little freaked out about how the introduction would go. We head over together to her house that evening and walk into the kitchen. Her mom greets us and seems delighted to meet me, which puts me in a good mood. Then she runs upstairs to grab her dad, who I can hear moaning and groaning about coming down. I didn't make out all of what they said, but I heard him distinctly say, "I'm not introducing myself to a 17-year-old dipit who thinks he can touch my daughter." Oof. Okay. My girlfriend and I awkwardly stand around pretending we're not hearing this stuff. When we hear a fine, and the parents both walk back down the stairs. Her dad totally reluctantly, in this over-the-top way, extends his hand and says, "Yuri Addisn't?" Literally just as I reach my hand out to say yes, I get a nosebleed. He stands there for a moment, mutters yup and walks straight out the back door to his wood shop, where he stayed for the rest of the night. Duck that over-dramatic asshole. I didn't even do anything wrong yet. I'm but dating a girl at the time. We walked home from watching Finding Dory. She lives about a quarter mile away from the theater, and when we walk in the door, I'm greeted by the man I slept with 2 months earlier. Edit. No, I am not going to write erotica about my sexual exploits. Thanks though. Had a massive poop on hold. We didn't know he was home, so we got in and I dashed to the toilet. 10 minutes later I had destroyed and quarantined the bathroom. When I went out he sees me and comes to greet. I tried to close the door to lock the odor in, but I failed. The smell was really bad. I saw his right eye tear up a little. Just now realizing that every girl I've ever dated hasn't had a dad. WTF. I'm in the same boat. First, just a stepdad. Second, dad living in NZ. Third, never met her parent as they didn't approve of me. Current, dad living 350 miles away. African family, so the mum basically doubles up as dad and is twice as scary. My girlfriend's stepdad was at work, so we were in her room watching TV on her bed. We weren't hugging, just holding hands sitting next to each other because of the way the bed is sat. I hear him arrive home downstairs. And about 10 minutes later, when I least expected it, a man who's a little shorter than me but a lot more bulked out slams open the door, with his arm already extended like a ducking Superman from an old Doctor Who episode, shouting, "Hello Laflux. How are you?" I thought it was some act done to intimidate me, and it did make me nervous. After a few months of knowing the guy, I know it was out of nervousness. It's not as bad as others here, but the sudden abruptness made me almost cheat myself. I had a Filipino GF in college. Decided to meet the parents. I drove around 3 hours to meet them, and even brought flowers and stuff. When for the first time in their life, they decide to practice a tradition of rejecting the BF 3 times before accepting him. The point is that if you really want their daughter, you'll try as many times as it takes. And since they had never done it before, my GF didn't think about warning me. I was pretty damn annoyed when they tossed my flowers right into the garbage. He was cool, but the fact that I was banging his daughter really seemed to bother him. Understandably. Luckily he liked MMA as well, so we bonded over that. While in high school, a girl and were making full use of the living room since her parents were gone for the day. At one point we're just kinda laying naked on the couch between rounds and we hear the door open, so we throw a big ass blanket over ourselves. In walks her dad, who greeted us. He had heard of me but hadn't met me, and proceeded to watch the movie we had on as background noise with us for another hour, all the while we're just naked under a blanket on the other couch. In 2005 I took a train to Connecticut to meet my college girlfriend's family. She picked me up from the train station, and when we got to the house, I had to pee really bad. Trip from Philly to Hartford was like 4 hours, so I figured I'd run to the potty before I would meet the family. She told me to use the bathroom upstairs, BC they were renovating the downstairs one. Open the door, there's her dad pooping. My high school girlfriend missed a week of school because she had pharyngitis. One day I went over to bring her some stuff from her locker and thought it would be funny to walk in wearing a surgical mask. I stood outside the house tying it around my head when her very tall and stocky father came out and asked me who I was and what I was doing. I told him I was the new BF and thought it would be funny to wear a mask. He wasn't amused, and neither was my GF. Jackie, I know you read it. If you're reading this, I still think it was funny. Showed up at her house unexpectedly at 11 PM. He was in bed. Once I was let in by her brother. He went and woke dad up to meet me. 2/10 experience. Don't wake a 250-pound Puerto Rican as a first meeting while dating his youngest daughter. What happened next? I shook his hand. He sleepily shook mine. Asked, in very broken English, why I was visiting his daughter so late. I said I had just arrived in the area and had missed surprising her in the outside world. He instantly woke up when I mentioned meeting her outside his house. She showed up at about that point and we left her father there steaming, sleepy and surprised. I'm marrying her next year. The dad was an ex-army ranger. He made me do yard work while the girl stayed inside. He started a fire to burn trimmed tree branches and started the "so you like my daughter" speech. That was fun. I really hate that sheet. It's like, bro, your daughter isn't your duck-in property. That has to be earned by doing physical labor. WTF. The dad was a huge guy, probably 6 feet 5 inches at least, and super ripped. When I first met him he was wearing no shirt and basketball shorts. He introduced himself as the leader of the local Hells Angels chapter and said, "If anyone in town starts anything with you guys, tell them you are with me." He was actually a nice guy most of the time unless he was drunk. I've heard stories before meeting him, so when I seen him it was scary. He actually was really nice and made everyone spaghetti for dinner. First time I went to my ex's house, her dog greeted me at the door before anyone else arrived. He then proceeded to hump my leg, and when I would smack him off he would bite my fingers. So when her dad came to answer the door I was just standing there dead-eyed while a little blue heeler humping the duck out of me. I actually was dating a girl for a long time. We had done all sorts of depraved 6 acts together. Once I went to visit after not having seen her in some time. Unfortunately, her parents were both hardcore televangelist people. So the mom literally sat us down and explained this is a Christian house and basically said no sick stuff allowed. But horniness is hard to overcome. The GF and I started watching a movie together. And touching a little. And I thought maybe if we're quiet and we make it quick. Then suddenly her dad shouted my name from the hall. I walked out and he proceeded to reiterate this is a Christian household and if we want to do what we want to do, get a hotel. I proceeded to have blue gonads for the duration of the visit. Before I met my wife, I was dating an Aussie woman, since I was working in Australia at the time. We'd shared some info about our past relationships, flings. You know, normal getting to know each other type stuff. Gauging what sort of life experience the other person has had. As it turns out, my last serious long-term relationship was with a black woman, and for some really messed reason, she ended up telling her father, who works as a long-distance truck driver. Did I mention that she was nuts? So what were his first words upon meeting me? "I hear you used to shag a docky." Yup, I think with that one sentence, I pretty much grasped the attitude of the entire family to a wide variety of social and racial demographics. Not me, but my friend's little brother had finally found the love of his life. These two ducking lovebirds were a match made in heaven. I think months had gone on and he ended up over at her parents for dinner. I think they were both in their mid-20s. The story told us that the girl's wild-eyed stocky little uncle grabbed my buddy by the throat and slammed him in the wall about 2 seconds after shaking his hand in a very pronounced effort to discourage him from becoming that guy who broke her little heart. Anyways, I think dinner that night was a tad awkward. This was about 5 years ago maybe? Anyways, the couple is still going strong. And I never heard of any other incidents to follow. The first time I met my GF's dad, I tried to shake his hand and introduce myself all serious and respectful like. He grabbed my hand and half shook it without even once looking at me. I thought he was the world's biggest big dick. 6 years later I'm engaged to his daughter and he and I are pretty damn close. He's paying for me to go to Disney World next year with him and his family for his older kid's wedding, lol. Not me. But when my one friend's daughter started seriously dating a man, we decided to have some fun. This is a big Italian family, so we had his brothers-in-law and his father and his best friend and some other friends, most of whom were big guys. We set up the kitchen chairs in a semicircle with one more chair in the center. All of us sat down in the chairs and called in the boyfriend. The father told him to take a seat and then said, cracking his knuckles, "What exactly are your intentions toward my daughter?" Then we couldn't keep straight faces, so we all laughed and had drinks. Edit, had more drinks. A friend said to this girl he liked as a joke, "Thanks for our last night." He didn't know her dad yet that walked by at the exact moment and who said to him, "Next time come downstairs so we can drink a beer once you're done." I had just gotten off the plane from a deployment. Met my girlfriend before taking her to a hotel for a weekend filled with games like Hide the Sausage. She told me I had to go meet her parents first, which is no big deal. Until good old Private Brooklyn 18 walked into Lieutenant Colonel girlfriend's dad's house. Now he's Lieutenant Colonel father-in-law though, so I guess it went okay. This was towards the mother, but I cringed with embarrassment still. I was meeting my friend's parents, and my friend was laying down the rules while walking there. No cursing. No dirty jokes. Okay? I respond. Well, what am I gonna do? Hi. I'm Ninjagesus101. Have you heard about the man who jerked off into a spoon? Suddenly, a voice behind us. Oh, that's interesting. Her mother was right behind us. Got a real shock meeting her father for the first time, because it was like looking at an older, paunchier version of myself. We'd been dating at university and having a lot of fun. Very kinky girl who taught me a lot. She did like to call me daddy during sex sometimes, which wasn't my thing, but you've got to be GGG. But when I met him and saw how similar looking we were, the daddy talk got really uncomfortable really quickly. The relationship didn't last long after that. Not me, but my sister used to date a guy who was a little older than her. She was like 15 and he was 17 I think, and the family didn't approve. Finally, we invite him over for some family function so that we can get to know him, and he agrees to come. I had just bought a Saiga AK and brought it over to show my dad. So here we are, standing in the living room, holding an AK-47, and who happens to walk in? My sister and her then boyfriend. I will never forget the look on this kid's face. He was terrified. They broke up shortly after and we still make fun of my sister about it. I was seeing this girl when I happened to be in town and ran into her at a bus stop. We just about had time to say hi to each other before a very old woman tried to get on a bus, tripped over the step, and fell directly backwards, landing hard on her head. This girl's mum, who has been an NHS nurse for the last 25 years, then turned out to be there with her as well. She immediately began assessing this woman's injuries and trying to stop the bleeding from her head. A pair of paramedics arrived shortly and took over, not after my ex's mum had tried to shoo them away, informing them that she'd been doing this sort of thing since before they were born. And that's the story of how I first met my ex-girlfriend's very intimidating mother while she was covered in an old lady's blood up to her elbows. Went to shake his hand and he left me hanging. Then about 4 years later, went telling him his daughter and I were getting married and she was a few months pregnant. He just said it's gonna be a small wedding. Eventually he stopped hating me.